Hi there, and welcome to day 2, which was postponed from yesterday because there was like a crazy storm of the breakup training. And today we're gonna kind of dive deeper into the breakup baggages of unprocessed narrative and um, unexpressed emotions. So yes, so unprocessed narrative basically is when the story of the relationship and or the breakup itself was just very confusing for the brain to process, and it just doesn't know what to think of it. So oftentimes it's manifests as like overthinking and rumination, obsessive thoughts, that kind of thing, because essentially it's just the brain like just trying to figure out like what the hell happened so it can like better predict for the future, because that's what the brain really does. It's just trying to predict things for the future, like what the heck went wrong, like what happened, and can't figure it out, so it's just kind of like on this loop. That's essentially what it's about. And then unprocessed emotion is a little bit more simple, but the reason why I'm doing both of them together today is because oftentimes once we get the narrative straight, then like the emotions can come through, because prior to that, like there's just like this confusion. So what you'll often find, what happens is once you have the narrative, then like things click, and then like the emotions come up. There's a helicopter here, so I'm just gonna wait for it to pass through. And also, hello Diogo. Glad that you're catching this. Okay, so it's pretty simple then. If unprocessed narrative is just like, we just need to help the brain get a narrative, and like the main way we do that actually is through validation. So I'm gonna list a couple of techniques to get like the narrative straight in our brain. So one way is just to like write down the entire like story of the relationship and breakup, just like from beginning to end, just so like you kind of have it like just there on the paper, and it's just like, instead of just like kind of circling in your brain, it's just like on the page. That's like one thing to start with, but like probably the most powerful thing to do is to actually have a friend or like a coach or therapist like say the entire story to them, and then have them basically validate your experiences. Because what often happens is like we kind of almost like self-gaslight ourselves or self-doubt ourselves, as in like, okay, did that actually happen, or was I on the wrong, or like I don't know, like we kind of just like doubt ourselves, and like that's what kind of gets the loop in a sense, just like this unsureness of like if we're allowed to believe something about what has happened. So yeah, like having someone sit down and just validate your story. So for example, it could be like, this thing happened, and then like, she didn't respond to me for like a week, and then your friend would be like, oh yeah, that's like really shitty, I'm sorry to hear that. Like that would be an example of validation. And yeah, just beware, there are examples of things that are like invalidation, so like make sure your friend is actually good at like actually validating and not like belittling feelings or making you doubt yourself kind of thing. Yeah, I once had someone who was doing the validation exercise with me, and they were like, oh, well, you thought this happened, and like that was obviously like the opposite of validation, because it's just creating like this doubt. Yeah, so that's like probably like the most powerful thing to do if unprocessed narrative is one of the breakup baggages that you have. Yeah, some other things you can do is say the whole story to yourself in a video and then listen to it back. And that's like a way to like hold space for yourself in a sense. And yeah, what else? I think those three things, like the telling the story to a friend and then writing the whole story to yourself, and also telling the story to yourself in a video, like those are like probably the most powerful ways to like get the narrative of the story in place. And that's kind of related to like the relationship itself. And now if we're talking about the breakup, and the breakup was just kind of like confusing and messy, that's essentially like a lack of closure. And so what you want to do is kind of like get kind of like the unsaid things out of you. So it's kind of similar to like what we've just talked about in terms of techniques, but it's just like focus on like getting the closure. So I did talk about this in my video about like closure and emotional release, but I'll go over it again. So basically that's if you can talk to your ex, sometimes this isn't recommended, but like if you guys like are out of like your no contact period, or like you're just kind of breaking things off, I actually would recommend talking to your ex, like, and just like just getting those final things out, saying things in like, you know, a peaceful and like emotionally intelligent way, but like that's probably like the best source of closure that you can actually get. And then the other thing is, yeah, you can like write the letter to them, or like say pretend a friend was your ex and you say the things to them and they hold your gaze, or you can yeah, do the video technique again where you say the things that you want to say, like in terms of the breakup, and yeah, and then listen to it back. So it's kind of like the same, similar things to before, but it's just focused on like those last final words kind of thing, and like wishing you well, sending you off. And like yeah, because in a sense our brain kind of, even though we're like broken up, our brain can kind of think like we're still in a relationship with this person. So it's like another thing I would add actually is actually having like, once you've actually processed the relationship itself, like I wouldn't do this step prematurely, but I would actually do a ritual to convey the sense that like this is done and this is over. So like, you know, burning the pictures, or like even having like a funeral for like your relationship, have your friends like witness you, kind of like talk about like, you know, the good times and the bad times, and then just like burn their pictures or burn like that letter maybe that you wrote, and just have like a ritual so it's like your brain understands like this relationship is dead. Because like that's kind of like the thing, it's like it is dead, and like so that's like a lot for the brain to process. It's like a primordial attachment relationship, and so that's like a big deal, because like in our mammalian brains we're like, who can we trust, who has our back, like this is like a survival kind of thing, right? So like these relationships are not to be taken lightly, and our brain does not take them lightly. So that's why, you know, it's hard to get over a lot of the times, because it's just like, who has my back now, like who loves me now, it's like this whole thing. And that's why breakups are painful, because it's like that, the severing of that primordial attachment relationship. So actually understanding that it is a death, and like honoring that, and having like that process for your brain to understand like, yes, this is over, this is dead. Yeah, so that would basically cover like narrative. Oh wait, actually no, I forgot like a whole other thing about narrative. Okay, so the thing is, if it's like a healthy relationship, you're less likely to have like the narrative baggage. For like the one main reason is that like healthy relationships are more clear cut and like less convoluted. So most likely, if you have narrative as one of your baggages, then like the relationship itself was probably not super healthy. It probably wasn't like, you know, you probably didn't have like, you know, clear communication, that kind of thing, or like you kind of, or a transparency or understanding where each other stood with each other. So there's like some things to kind of keep in mind with like that kind of thing. So yeah, like you kind of want to be on your own, because we're going back to like the brain in a limbo state, like not understanding like which side to believe, and then like ruminating, because it's just like, oh, like was I in the wrong, were they in the wrong, like I don't know, it's just like kind of going back and forth. What I would recommend in that case is just be on your own side first. Like you can consider like all the perspectives and all the stuff at some point, but like to start and just get your brain like understanding like the narrative, just be on your own side first. And that's also what the point of like the validation exercise with a partner is like they're kind of helping you be on your own side, right? And then like being aware of like trauma filters, which is just like things from like codependency or whatnot, kind of putting people on like a pedestal or like rose-colored glasses. That can, when we have like these filters that kind of take out like all the information, then our brain is just like operating on like some bits of information. And then it's just like, okay, but I have like these rose-colored glasses on, so I'm seeing their best lights, but I'm not seeing like the dark side of them. But our gut and our like other parts of ourselves have processed like that shadow aspect of them, but we haven't integrated it into our awareness. So our brain is kind of battling between like, oh, but they were so awesome, but also it experienced like the not so awesome part that was suppressed, right? Like we didn't want to see the shadow part because we wanted to protect the relationship. So a lot of that is just kind of like letting go of like those filters that we used to see our partners in, and just seeing like the full picture, and understanding that we had that filter in the first place because to protect ourselves, because we wanted to protect the relationship. Yeah, and another thing is to be aware of matrix morality, which is basically attachment to right and wrong. We Yeah, because a lot of like the times rumination and obsessive thoughts are like, oh, I was in the wrong, they were in the wrong, I was in the wrong. Like we don't want to be in the wrong, so we do all these mental gymnastics to be like to justify that we're not in the wrong or something. And it's just like the easiest way to get out of that is just like kind of let go of the concept of right and wrong like altogether, um, and just like understand that every behavior is coming from like whatever the behavior is arising, there's a reason for it. And not to say that the behavior is good, but it's just like there is a reason for everything, and to not get caught up in right and wrong, either on like your right and wrong or their right and wrong. And that's not to say like you can't feel bad if they did something that hurt you, but it's just to let go of like the moralism over it, in a sense. Yeah. So to recap, the narrative baggage. Um, Basically, just help your brain get a coherent story through validation and just writing the story out, and get closure somehow through like ritual, letters, friends, saying the unsaid things, and yeah, and just kind of get the whole story in order from start to finish. Okay, so that's narrative baggage. Now I'm gonna move on to like unprocessed emotion as the other type of like baggage that might be holding you back from getting over your relationship. So this one's a little bit more straightforward. It's just basically feel your damn feelings. Like that's it. But okay, it's obviously like if it was that simple, then like probably so many people wouldn't have a problem with it. But yeah, like I guess it's just okay. Yeah, just realizing feel your feelings. Don't be afraid of negative emotions. Don't be afraid to be petty. Not being afraid of being petty doesn't mean like, you know, send your ex like a really angry text. I have done that, but like, yeah, but not being afraid of just like feeling like those really, you know, quote unquote nasty feelings of like resentment and rage kind of thing. The point is like you feel it and you move through it. So like, yeah. So for example, if you're feeling like angry or betrayed, betrayal is like a really big emotion, and that like whoever's feeling betrayed, like I'm with you on that. That's like such a hard emotion to transmute. But by the way, betrayal is basically what it is about is like your expectations weren't fulfilled. So if you expected them to be faithful, but they weren't, that's like the betrayal. It's just like you weren't what I thought you would be. So in a sense, getting over betrayal is just kind of like readjusting your expectations of like, oh, okay, like this is actually the kind of person they are, which kind of ties into narrative of like, you need to update the narrative in a sense of just like, okay, like this is actually what's going on. And so like our brain needs to kind of go through like a process of like reorienting in a sense. So yeah, going back to like emotions. So yeah, it's like if you feel, by the way, you might hear my cat meow in the background. Anyway, yeah, so emotions, if you're feeling angry, rageful, like betrayed, like that kind of thing, that would really benefit from like somatic kind of release. So like some stuff I mentioned in like my other videos, just like screaming into pillows, punching bags, like shaking, like breath work can be really good too, or screaming out like car windows, like just having like slamming your fist on the ground, like having an adult tantrum, punching pillows. Or you can even go to a rage room where like you can pay the place to like break shit. Like there's so many ways, but like that, just like that somatic component is like so powerful. And also don't be afraid to imagine beating up your ex. Like that is very cathartic too. So I'm not condoning like actually do it, but it is a good exercise, especially if you felt betrayed or something like that. Yeah, and I think it's just like understanding that there is like a grief process, because this is a literal death of a relationship, and so your brain needs to grieve. So just like, yeah, just allow those feelings to come through. And like, yeah, it's nothing to be afraid of. Don't be afraid of going there. Like you'll survive the depths of your emotion, and you'll come out stronger. Yeah, so I think, okay, actually one other thing is that like if you do the somatic release stuff and like you're still feeling angry, a lot of the times that actually has to do with like forgiving yourself. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. See if there's anything like, if you do the process and you're still feeling some emotions, see if like there's some emotions that you're mad at yourself about, or you're directing towards yourself kind of thing. So, yeah, I think that is everything. So, thank you for tuning in to day 2. And day 3 will cover unhealthy beliefs and unfulfilled needs. So, that's going to be really exciting too. So, yeah, I'll post the notes for this video later today on my page and on like the breakup group. So, yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you tomorrow if you're tuning in. Okay, take care.